I'm Joyce Roher Corbin. I've lived in Mapleton for 78 years. I'm in the house next door to where I was born and raised. We all got together as neighbors, as kids in the neighborhood. I had a neighborhood that was a lot of children that was the same age as I was. And we were out in the alleys playing hopscotch and hide and go seek and all the things that normal kids played in that age, because there was no phones, there was no telephones, there was no telephones, there was no TV. We had nothing, no electronic games or anything like that. And we were just running around doing our thing. I remember that we used to turn the radio on at night and listen to different shows, that was on that we enjoyed. I think I was about 12 or 13 years old when we got a telephone in the house. And the funny part about that was there was 5 other families on your list, with your phone. And when the phone would ring, everybody had their own ring. When the phone would ring, you could hear the clicks of everybody turning up, picking up their phone and listening in on the conversation. So nothing was private,
The old party line
Yes.
days.
But if you had problems, from that party line, people knew about it. They helped you out with it, It was a very, very close neighborhood or very close town. I can remember during World War II, we lived next door to Agata DeMario, and she was my grandmother because I never had a grandmother, so I always called her Grandma. And of course her son Art was held in a prison camp, and for a small town we had Art DeMario and Bob Baker and Pete Dell, and they were all in, and of course the whole town was really interested in where those guys were at, because it was months before we heard, whether they were alive or dead. And I can remember when they came home, we had such a big party at the Mario's for Art coming home, And I can remember when the troop trains went through, and us kids would stand down along the railroad tracks and wave at the soldiers going through. And oftentimes they would throw notes off, if it was somebody, especially my brother Pete. He came through and my sister was walking down the street and he threw a note off that she would get it, because we always run and picked him up. And here he was going through and we had no idea where he was at the time. But, family. And if you were in somebody else's yard and you got into trouble, you got corrected, and your parents knew it before you got home. It was just, neighbors sat on the porch and talked to you. People actually talked and communicated, something they don't do today, And it's something that you miss whenever you've grown up with it. But I can remember whenever we got to swimming pool, we spent our whole days at that swimming pool. Well, we had a big cook stove in the kitchen, and we had a heater in the dining room, and that's the way that we heated. My dad used to get up in the middle of the night when it was real cold and punch the fires up, so that we could have heat. We always had a bathroom in our house, but there was no hot water going up to it. It was years before we had hot water going into the bathroom. I can remember we used to take baths in front of the cook stove in a round tub. And, but we were happy. We were all poor. We didn't know we were poor, but we were. We didn't have what the kids have today, and I guess that way they'd think we were poor. But everybody was happy because you didn't have a lot, and everybody was that way. We had big gardens, and if you had a neighbor that didn't have very much, you supplied them. They canned everything, and I can remember we used to have a man that would bring ice around because it was these ice boxes that weren't or wasn't electric, you know, and they would bring these big chunks of ice around, and the kids would follow him all over town, and he'd give them chunks of ice to eat. We had a baker that come around and gave you bread, you know. We had a milkman. We had a lady from out the valley that used to come in and sell eggs and butter, and so all of our supplies was met. And I remember, another thing I remember as a kid during the war was we used to have air raids, and they would blow the fire whistle, you know, and everybody had to go in and turn off their lights. And I can remember we used to gather at the neighbors, because sometimes we knew ahead of time they were going to have them. We used to go to the neighbors, and we'd put blankets up over the windows and set in the halls so that we could have light. And then they'd blow the all clear signs, you know. And it's now you look at it and think that was crazy, because why would they come here and bomb Mapleton? But at that time, you know, you didn't know. I have a lot of memories of the war, and I think it was because there was so many around us that we loved, you know, that that just happened to be something that stuck in your mind. Yes, yeah. The parades were really big, and of course the Mapleton Band, that was a big thing, you know, at that time. And I think you know all of our relatives was in that. And then another thing we had was teenage dances at the band hall. Buddy Kyler had his serenaders, and Barry and all of them played in that. And when they were practicing, they would let the teenagers go in up there and dance, you know, while they were practicing. And Newt Parker had the back room with the booze and stuff in it, the kids with a jukebox, and teenagers would go in there and sit and talk and listen to the jukebox. Curly Baker had, he opened up that big garage that you see now, and he had pinball machines and stuff like that in there. We all were able to go in. I mean, we had lots of entertainment. So, we had Snyder's, which was mercantile. We had Weibel's. What else did we have? We had Newt Parker's, of course. He was confectionery. Ted Myers I don't know whether it was Ted or whether it was his father, had a meat market down where Elizabeth and them lived, in their old house that burned. Traps had a house. Park Andrews at one time took over the Cloverleaf. Up in where the gas station behind that, Faust's Apartments, I believe it was called. The Arnold boys had a grocery store in there. Gilbert's. So we had, and it was a pool room. Bus Chute ran a pool room, and it burned down. It was setting where Brownie Heaster's house is down there in the corner. That whole section was taken up with a big pool room. Yes. We used to get down on Saturday night and get on a bus, go to Huntington, go to the movies, and about 10 or 10:30 on Saturday night, the bus would bring you back to Mapleton. And when my mother and the women here in town worked at the sewing factory, they were picked up every morning down by where the old bank is on the bus. And Roms and Huntington owned that bus station. And I can remember my sister Zelda used to play the piano, and we'd get around in the evenings and sing, you know, everybody. She'd play and everybody would be singing, and the neighbors would come in and sing. And you know, this is morbid, I know, but one of the things that I can remember the most growing up was when somebody died, they were brought to the house. And I can remember, my parents would probably killed me if they'd known this, but I can remember we'd get out of school at dinner time to go home for lunch, and if anybody was in the churches or in the house or anything, all these kids come running down the road. We'd go in to view these bodies, you know. I mean, I guess that was our great entertainment. But You know, it was things like that. It sticks with you when you were kids. Things you did that it was just so much different than it is today. And I was never an ice skater. I roller skated because that was another thing when we were teenagers. Bob Love had the school bus. He used to take us to the roller skating rinks in Lewiston and Cypress Beach up above, I think it was by around Bedford or someplace, wasn't it? On Friday nights and Saturday nights we would go roller skating. So, but I never got on to the ice skating. I can remember going swimming up here at what we called the reservoir.
Yeah.
We used to go over there and swim.
But you weren't allowed in there, right?
Oh, we went in there and swum.
Yeah. Were you allowed in there?
No, but we went in there anyhow. And it was always full in the summertime. And of course, after the pool was built, we didn't do that anymore. So.